check, check. All right, the time is 6:34. I'd like to call this, it's an echo. I'd like to call this special Board of Education order. Trustee Goodrich, could you perform the roll call for those Board of Education members who are present, please?
Certainly, Madam President. Trustee Townsend,
Present.
trustee Fields,
Here.
trustee Schindler,
Here.
trustee Kingsley, not here, trustee Goodrich, I'm here, Vice President Lee, not here, and President Hawkins.
Here. Thank you. We have 5 Board of Education members present and 2 are absent. At this time, I would like to invite everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, is there a motion for the acceptance of the agenda?
Madam President, so moved.
Thank you. A motion has been made by trustee Schindler. Is there support for this motion?
Trustee Townsend, support.
Thank you. Supported by trustee Townsend. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, that takes us to public comment. And I do not see anyone in the audience this evening, so we will move on to our consent agenda, which is item number 5. Is there a motion at this time?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the 1 May 16, 2023 special board meeting minutes, 2 May 16, 2023 special board study session minutes, 3 personnel matters as per the presented list dated 6/5/23 new hires, resignations, retirements, and terminations.
Thank you. A motion has been made by trustee Goodrich. Is there support for this motion?
Support, trustee Schindler. Oh, sorry.
Motion made by trustee Goodrich, supported by, was that Schindler?
Yes.
Supported by trustee Schindler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, that takes us to our first action item this evening. Number 6, under student affairs, we have the acceptance of a field trip request to Kalahari Water Park in Sandusky, Ohio. Is there a motion at this time?
Trustee Townsend, I move that the Board of Education approve the field trip to El Bonos.
Buenos
Oh, thank you.
Vecinos.
El Buenos Vecinos class to Kalahari Water Park in Sandusky, Ohio on June 10th, 2023.
Thank you. A motion has been made by trustee Townsend. Is there support for this motion?
Support, trustee Goodrich.
Thank you. Supported by trustee Goodrich. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, a motion was made by trustee Townsend, supported by trustee Goodrich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, that takes us to item 7, which is our midterm monitoring evaluation session with our facilitator, Mary Kerwin. At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Zachary Ross.
Thank you, Madam President. I just always look forward to this opportunity for feedback from the Board of Education. And we welcome the facilitator from the Michigan Association of School Boards, who is always so prepared and just allows the board and I to have this dialogue. So thank you, Mary Kerwin, for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so just for the benefit of the meeting, I just want to mention, and so the public knows that we engage in a quarterly progress monitoring review of the superintendent, because this provides us with an opportunity to self-assess. The board, facilitated by MASB consultant Mary Kerwin, will participate in a progress monitoring and self-evaluation workshop. And at this time, I will turn it over to Mary Kerwin. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. So the midterm monitoring session rests in the superintendent evaluation itself. So we know that we do an annual superintendent evaluation at the end of the calendar year. At the end of the academic year, we do a check-in with the superintendent. See if the goals are progressing well, if there's anything that needs to be tweaked or adjusted, what has been learned at this point as the school year wraps up. So we always begin with the focus, which is most important, which is student growth and academic achievement. We are required by federal and state laws to do multiple assessments over the course of the year. And so we learn from those multiple assessments. And that is included in the midterm monitoring process that you have prepared for us with the help of your cabinet. So the superintendent is overall responsible for every student's achievement in the district. There are many people who work to make that happen along the way. But you, as a Board of Education, have one employee, and it is the superintendent. So she bears the ultimate responsibility to see that that happens. So it looks like multiple assessments were in fact given this year at multiple grade levels. Is that true?
Yes.
And so what did you learn overall from that?
So overall, first of all, we don't have all of the assessments in. We know that teachers are still gathering the information. We're looking at the fact that in the results of the 21-22 looking at, we're seeing that some of the data has declined. And we are not surprised by that data. We're seeing a post-pandemic, some of the scores are decreasing, and we've indicated that in our information to the board. We know that we've looked at partnership agreement with our state of Michigan. Even today, we met with our PAL, they call it the PAL from Michigan Department of Education. And so looking at that, our MDE overall district student growth performance, our baseline was at that minimally effective with that overall looking at with our state assessment. And so we look at, that's that big test. But if we look at our NWEA overall reading scores, those scores at that, again, overall was at the minimally effective, but that is the overall looking at our scores. Next week, when our staff, when we look at, there's going to be some highs, because some of our students made multiple years growth individually. And then some of them didn't make the year's growth that we wanted to see. And there's a lot of factors in that. We know transportation. So some of the students, when they came in and it impacted, as we heard from parents over and over again, they didn't come in they missed some school. Some of them, they came in mid-year. So they didn't even come, we didn't see the year's growth because we didn't even see the year. Some of them we didn't get to measure. But then we look at in math, we did make effective. So one of the things I want, because I know some of the teachers will say, but wait a minute, you'll see when we get to see at the end, and I noted that in our in mine even, teachers, when we see, because that teachers really have been looking at that, and that's one of the reasons why they eliminated, and we look at legislation, some of that third grade reading, the elimination of the third grade reading law, is that we don't know post-pandemic what this really means. And so we've seen this fluctuation, and we don't know the full impact. And so we've looked at individually with our teachers for them to look at what does this mean for individual scores, and for our teachers, even with the evaluation data, we've been talking to individual teachers because we've extrapolated that from their evaluation process as well, because we don't want them to be impacted negatively by some of those factors like transportation, like transient students and all of that. So even in our individual buildings and individual classrooms, we've really tried to look at the data and say, what is our growth? And so when we pull that out, you'll see overall, we'll look at either in the data of about effective, but we still have a lot to do in growing. And so we see that overall, they're in that measurement of variability between minimally effective to effective overall.
And that's not just a district problem, it's not just a state problem, but it's been a national problem.
Absolutely.
There are things that are unexplained. You look at a large district like LAUSD, the Los Angeles district where students made growth during the time of COVID, it's still unexplained. So there are things that we're learning about that. And also monitoring whether this is a 2-year impact. And I know that you're carefully looking at that to make sure that we can do whatever can be done.
Yes.
So today, we did have on-site learning for trustees. Trustees attended sessions to learn CBA classes with me. So I'd like to mention that on page 2, on the second page of this packet, you'll see at the very top where it addresses, yes, our students can benefit from direct instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension in the early years. So this is something that's very important.
Absolutely.
I referenced today when we were there, and I've also spoken to some cabinet members, that this morning on a podcast, which is the Daily from the New York Times, it cited work that has been used for the past 50 years. It's Lucy Cochran's work. It's called the the Balanced Literary Program. And it turns out that that may have had setbacks for many. And I know, again, it wasn't just in New York. Did you happen to hear it? But I do recommend it.
I'm really, yeah. I didn't listen to the podcast, but I know exactly what you're talking about. and yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so did Secretary Goodrich had heard of it too. But I do encourage everyone to listen to it. It's just 26 minutes, but it also puts in the MRI, what we've learned from MRIs and how important reading is. The reason I'm mentioning this on this page, you're doing best practice. On this page, you are addressing the way students learn to read. The early language matters. This is not a penalty that should be borne. It's one that we recognize has been done. And again, a generation has been lost because of ways that learning what was considered best practice at that time. So again, it's the Daily, it's the podcast. It's not long, it's 26 minutes, but it does correspond on page 2 to what we have learned and how going forward, students really will do remarkably well. So as you said, I think it's important that you're tracking everything and that there are plans in place for addressing it for the 23-24 school year. And again, we test reading and writing and mathematics. So all of those pieces are included in here. You talked about some of the surprises in the data. I kind of would like to talk a little bit about professional development in preparation for the next academic year. Would you like to speak to that? Would you like someone from the cabinet to address that?
Oh, yes. We number one, we already have our dates set.
Oh.
Our district professional development plan is due to the state June 30th. So we have our mapping date set for next week, in which we literally sit in this room and schedule out all of our dates for our buildings, for the district-wide. We meet with our WISD to plan and collaborate with them so that we can not only access what we use here, we also use our dates with we leverage the WISD. And we're fortunate enough, just as a reminder, board, to have our SEEK grant. So that's not just what we offer internally, we allow through that SEEK grant for our staff to be able to have self-directed choice in terms of what types of professional development they want to access, along with even this past year, buildings were able to offer and say, do we want building-wide professional development, or do they want to have a choice in addition to what we offer? And so that allows them to be able to get renew their teaching certificates. And so that's an added benefit not only do they grow as a professional, but they are also able to have their teaching certificate renewed. And so it gives them a chance to hone in on these particular things that's aligned to the MyKIP plan. Because it has to be aligned, first of all, it has to be aligned to the MyKIP plan. And it grows and is aligned to these goals here, to the things that we know in data that we have to focus on and hone in, because we keep saying it needs to align specifically to our plan, to our needs, to the things that we have these specific strands. And if you can, I keep going back to on Monday, because we know our state tells us right here in this 98B report, like what surprised you most? 98B report. We have to report to you. So you're gonna get, we didn't go deep today, but you're gonna go deep again on what we have to focus on. That's what the professional development needs to be revolved around in each classroom and each building. And so they get to have that choice, but it also align.
You referenced the SEEK grant, and you have an entire page included in this midterm monitoring of all the monies, but you were awarded a considerable amount in the SEEK.
Yes,
So congratulations on that. I know that that's an investment that was made because you do so well.
absolutely.
One of your keys in your professional development program and spurring achievement in the classrooms is the coaching piece. So you too have been recognized for that coaching piece. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I'm just, again, I want to talk about it. And I don't know if you got to see on the AASA magazine just this week, just this weekend.
Would you tell for the viewers at home?
Oh, it's the superintendent, the association, just this weekend, the National Superintendents Association highlighted an article that I wrote. It was the highlight of their magazine this weekend. And then on Monday, the Michigan Association of Superintendents highlighted it again. And it was about the work that we're doing in this district on how we're growing our and mentoring our teachers to be our parapros to become teachers, our teachers to become principals, our principals to become central office persons, and how I'm mentoring not only in this district, but in other places. This is our coaching model in this district. And we have the opportunity, not just because this is the way we are, our identity, and that's part of the DILTS model, the research-based protocol and our cognitive coaching. It is also because we have this opportunity through the SEEK grant. And these funds allow us to be able to pay substitute teachers, to be able to have our teachers outside of the classroom to go to follow principals, our principals to be able to have another person to be able to be a principal, so that principals can come out and to follow us. And we need the funds to do that. It just doesn't happen without that resource. And the SEEK grant also allows our principals and our teachers to go and have this professional development and to have this type of training. And so we really appreciate those funds, and we have to be also responsible. So the U.S. Department of Education really monitors how we utilize the funds, how we use it responsibly for the ways in which they've given it to us to be able to expend it properly.
And during the course of today's monitoring, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. The board is aware that during the summer, auditors will come in and look to ensure that every single grant you have received, every dollar has gone directly where it should. And it's lucky to be the recipient of such dollars. I wanted to go back to coaching for a minute. Many districts wish, this is a wish, gee, I know we could be more successful if we had successful coaching. I think the reason that you're being highlighted so much is that it has had a great impact, and that your ability to retain your coaches has been so key. So it wasn't just a blip where, oh, look, we had some good people, but you've been able to retain them and train more, and teachers learn more from each other, and evidence of that. You've included, again, this is on the second page at the bottom, so that everyone will know what high quality instruction, which has been the direction of this Board of Education. High quality instruction looks like, sounds like, feels like, and ensures that this type of instruction is delivered daily. So that when you walk through the schools, when you're able to see the classrooms, everyone recognizes that quality instruction is happening for every student every single day. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else regarding, we just touched on some piece, the board has a complete report. I wondered if there was anything else that we wanted to address regarding student achievement assessment.
One of the things, and I just want to highlight again, the focus on our students going back to the graduation rate increases. Part of, I mentioned it at the graduation speech, and one of our students highlighted it. Because we talk about, sometimes we look at the data in terms of student achievement. And one of the students that I interviewed talked about, sometimes we look at our scores and it doesn't seem commensurate to other surrounding districts. And they say, our students, they have these higher grade point averages, or they're graduating and our graduation rate looks this way because we water it down. We diminished the requirements. And one of our students said, look at our valedictorian. She had a 4.0 and she did it because while she was dual enrolled. And she was dual enrolled, and he reminded me that she got that 4.0 and the college professors gave her those grades. And so it could not be because we diminished the expectations, that we had high expectations with high levels of support. And so the number of dual enroll students that we have here, it just continues to increase. Our STEM middle college students have high grade point averages and while attending college classes, and that we're not diminishing in any way. We continue to raise the expectations. And so having STEM middle college is hard to keep the 100% in 2021, but having the 98.2% graduation rate at STEM middle college and 89.8% graduation rate at AC Tech. And although ACE looks like the 49.6%, that was last year, the numbers that are happening this year, they still have people, we're seeing them come across. So this is, again, last year's, 2023, the numbers, we don't even have the final numbers, are raising every single day. And so that expectation, the high rigor, the high expectation, that with the high levels of support and the allowing, we have 15 micro-credentials. The students all left out with some type of stackable credential, and they all had their ribbons and leaving out with some type of stackable credential this year. Not from the school, but from some type of, it was Google or some other type of credential. And so that's the thing that we're very proud of, is that sometimes it does not translate.
And I think it's wonderful that that came from a student to make that specifically. And again, dual enrollment is where one is attending high school and earning college credits through the college at the same time. And again, those grades are not given, they're earned.
Absolutely.
They're absolutely right. You mentioned rigor. Rigor during community conversations when we had many community groups give input for the board's consideration in preparing their vision statements. And rigor from the community was something that they wanted. I know we're going to cover a lot, and I'm glad you brought up the students, but because you brought up the dual enrollment, that is a financial advantage. because students will enter college or where they're going with credits already in their account for which they haven't had to write a check.
Absolutely.
So this is just savvy. We're going to move a little bit to financial literacy. That was a mandate from the state, and certainly one that your community agrees with. We believe students should leave our experience with an understanding of financial literacy. How is that going right now? And would you be tweaking some pieces of that?
Yes, all of our seniors have to take a class. They're enrolled in, it's not called financial literacy. Dr. Lopez, what is the name of the class? Yes. Finance, personal finance. It's called personal finance. All of our students, all of our seniors must take the course. It is now, what we're looking at doing, just like we had it as a micro credential, we're looking at having it being Dr. Lopez calls them badgers. They're called badging, trying to have it as a credential so that it can be one of those that they can receive one of the micro credentials, so that the students really love
that.
now having the badges. And so Dr. Hugan is looking at saying, how might it be so looked at in a way that they can receive something for it? Because students really take a different approach at an interest in it when they can receive a piece.
That makes some sense.
So
So,
that's one way of tweaking it so that there's a more relevance to the.
so
course.
currently this is offered senior year. The seniors who finish will have had personal finances as part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And then, again, if you have any tweaks or changes to that, then keep the board informed. Okay, we wanted to talk about HR. You kind of brought up some about, I was just wondering about how many employees overall do you have?
Overall, 700.
Okay. And so are there areas that will need active recruiting? In this report, you talk about how you're recruiting on an ongoing basis. And a goal is always to retain. So once you have good people, you really want to retain them. And I know a lot of effort's gone into that.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that, and then areas where you're really trying to actively recruit to fill some slots.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The research is saying the best recruitment is retention. You've gotten that right. We have two main areas to focus on. One is transportation, and two, actually the first is special education.
Correct.
And number two is transportation. Special education areas are the most hard to fill, especially in secondary, where there's a specific highly qualified credential areas in Michigan where you have to be, if you're secondary, you have to have it in that secondary area in the specific departmental area. So if you're math, it has to be the secondary math focused in CIE, whatever that area is. And even in ancillary, we've really been looking for teacher consultants and school psychologists, speech and language pathologists. And so those ancillary have even been hard to find. And mental health obviously is a huge area. And because we've been expanding, the need has been growing so much. We've found that there is, although we've had more resources and finances, that the need has grown. And because the need has grown in so many other school districts as well, then now there's such a need everywhere. So all districts are looking. And so it's such a competitive wage and competition. That's a huge area. And then obviously transportation. And because again, transportation is a need everywhere, the competition is great. And people just see it as school district transportation, whereas teachers, people think about teaching, and teaching certificates are one thing. But if you think about the two areas that I'm talking about, psychologists, speech and language, you can be a speech and language pathologist in a hospital, in a group home, in all kinds of places. If I have a CDL, I can be a transportation person anywhere, and I can work 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours. I don't need to work in a school district for limited hours. And so when you think about nurses and person who holds a CDL, the competition is much greater. And I think people don't understand when we're talking about recruiting for those areas that you are versatile, where you are needed. We value so much those persons who can work in schools, but I think people don't look at, when we look at HR and those roles, that especially after the pandemic, they said, oh,
Right.
you can work anywhere. Their eyes opened up, and people recruited them, and they said, my goodness, I can work anywhere, and they really can. And so it is a challenge now to that they were exposed to the world of work outside of schools and the challenges that schools offer. And our retirement is now different. And so those roles that are open to things beyond a teaching certificate, and those grants and things that we talk about, they're not eligible. So now when we have grants that offer teachers benefits and teachers bonuses and teachers things that US Department of Ed don't offer to
So it
specific
sounds-
groups.
so COVID did have an impact.
Absolutely.
COVID had an impact, as you say, in terms of choices that people recognized and choices that, and changes that they opted to. So it sounds like, given everything, we know that the community, through our ESSERS conversations, ESSERS where the funds, as you said, funds have been available for mental health, and your desire to find those who would do services through the school or through the community to address mental health, which is a driving need in the community. A driving need in the community was for transportation. So I think community members really want to see a sense of urgency, and you do have that sense of urgency. And we look forward to seeing plans and progress on that, and then shared with the community, since these were their directions, particularly, mental health. And again, it's not the funding, it's choices that people have made who had these occupations and see other ways to fulfill them now. So is it this district's problem alone?
Oh, no.
And it's not just this district, it's not just this county, it's not just this state. But I know that your board, your staff, and you are very directed on how can we meet this need. And so that is important. So continue with that, with that sharing, and we wish you progress in that area. So those are some of the HR pieces. As you included in here, we haven't completed the school year, so evaluations haven't been done. So there are parts on this midterm evaluation, which often we hold after the school has concluded, that as these come, you will keep the board aware. Is that? Okay. All right. You have included the feedback, though, and feedback is one of the state requirements. They call parent feedback. I know you call it, and I do, family feedback. So we have heard back from families about and from staff and from the students. So all of that feedback has given, and we talk about things that you have learned, and that is included in here. So feedback has been completed. Included in here are also goals for your upcoming year. These look like, we know that each school has goals, but these are the overarching district goals, which correspond particularly with academic achievement. You made a reference, Superintendent, about third grade. And I think that it's possible that those who might be listening or viewing might not yet be aware that the new direction is no longer for third grade retention, which was not a best practice, but it was a mandate from the legislature, which has now been removed. That doesn't mean the urgency for reading literacy has. Would you like to speak a little bit? to that?
Correct. Previously, the law, required if students did not meet a certain standard on the statewide assessment for districts. A letter actually came from the state of Michigan that said we were to retain those third graders in our locals back from, and make them not progress to the fourth grade unless a parent came and appealed and to the district and asked us to move them on for certain reasons. There were certain designations. And now that law has been repealed, and there are still strategies that we will use. There is not in any way, and I think that was the whole premise, is to say, I think that is what has paused people. There is not a way that people say, okay, now let's just give up. Let's not put a multi-tier system of support in place to allow for us to look at students, look at their needs, give give instruction as well as intervention to ensure that every student's needs are being met. I think that is what the original intention of the third grade reading law was, is to say, we understand that at third grade, this is the determining factor. If at third grade you cannot read, it's the biggest indicator that you have a straight school to prison pipeline. We understand that if you can't read, there's going to be a problem in the future. And so people had an urgency of saying, what are we going to do to stop this trajectory? There was a problem. And so we still know there's a problem. The data still says that there's a problem. So what are we going to do to stop the problem? And we still have to say there's a problem. And we have a data problem at YCS. So we have to still do something. So that does not erase that we have a problem. We still have to do something. And so removing the law doesn't change the fact that we've got to take our data seriously, and we've got to continue to remain focused on student achievement. So no matter what's happening in our community, and that's why I like our board still says, we got a problem. We got to still deal with the problem, and we still have to remain focused.
It is a challenge. However, you are doing a lot with your early learners.
Absolutely.
And so, as I said, I mentioned that the daily podcast, so that will put a reference point on it.
Absolutely.
Wasn't just here, but working with your early learners, all of those pieces to help us move forward with the way we know children actually learn how to read. So it wasn't, those frustrations for those families were a lot of curriculum based, not here, but curriculum based nationally, that have been rethought. And I think that going forward, it'll be such a benefit to students, teachers, and families to see success. And again, the love of reading.
Well, and I applaud this board because also this weekend, there was an article saying that most districts who have the dual immersion programs only give it to those who have wealth. And we have the dual immersion program at Ford Early Learning Center. And that, I was just like, go YCS, you know, and so that is exactly where we need it and it talks about, you don't have it at the places where people who have multi-language, because they don't call it the right thing, but multi-languages first, don't have that exposure. And that's exactly who we have it with, those who need it best. And that was a research article. And yes, board, you trusted the administration and the researchers right there.
There is a big focus in your report here on reading. Because again, you're looking at the data and you're going to see how to move that data. And you know that the results have been unacceptable for for what we hope to see for our own children. But we'll be looking for multiple assessments moving forward into the next year and then see how it tweaks to the program. Midway through, we do have all of your lists of grants, over $24 million, the highest being SEEK, which you referenced, and how that is being applied. So we were here again for the federal funding during and after COVID, what we refer to as ESSERS funds. And you were able to use those ESSERS funds quite well and included community input. We still want to keep doing that. Might you share a little bit about climate and culture and what you're hoping that each student feels and experiences while in this school district?
Absolutely. Number one, we want them to feel like they have a sense of belonging. That's the first thing. We understand they can't learn if they don't feel like they belong. And so we talk a lot here about, do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you feel me? Do you respect me? Constantly. Dr. Lopez always talks about, do you love me? And I understand, but that's my premise. He has added on that piece, but that piece of belonging, and that comes with DILT's nested levels of learning. That's the research piece that I bring to the table from cognitive coaching and adaptive schools. And that sense of belonging is the first piece. And so part of that is that culture piece that needs to be there. And so if they feel like they belong, even if the staff members first feel like they belong, and I know people say, why does the staff? Because if they feel like they belong, then they can make the student feel like they belong. And so that's that piece. And so how do you make them feel like they belong? Seen, heard, valued, and respected. And so part of that is, that's why we get to looking and breaking down this data, because if you're excluded from school, you don't belong, right? I mean, that's part of the premise. And so that's why we break that, we've broken down the data like that.
So there are pie charts that are included in here, and they're very revelatory because there have been some. So again, the reason I point out that this is sitting in the superintendent evaluation is a lot of this is mandated reporting, which includes the graduation rates, which you talked about. The law says that they must improve every year, and they have, and you show year after year after year, and a focus on suspension and expulsion. It is included in here, and the pie chart then breaks it into different areas so we can see where areas of concern. I think, don't you agree, board, that the pie charts this year are very helpful in being able to discern exactly what's going on? So it's by school and other characteristics, correct?
Yeah.
The suspension and expulsion information will be included as part of the annual report. Annual report for folks at home, again, that must be that is carefully worked on right now and then published in the fall. So it's submitted to the state and published in the fall. Can be done online, and it includes individual building information as well. Anything else you'd like?
Yep,
to add?
and the only reason why this is here right now, this is just a snapshot of disproportionality. So right now, you're only seeing a snapshot of the special education piece. I only highlighted this because I wanted you to note that I'm talking about the fact that we have by school suspensions, and then it's going to start looking at, these are suspensions by school, district-wide. Then we start talking about attendance, and the lightness, the ones here at color are impacted by transportation, because you guys have been hearing a lot about transportation. So I just wanted to have you note that.
That's in the bar graph.
The bar graph. And then the next part, the following charts are the special ed disproportionality, just to let you see how males are impacted and African-American males most on the end charts. Just to kind of raise up that we are really focusing on, and we have a group that we're working on with the ISD to continue to make sure that we're not going sliding backwards on the disproportionality. And that is a focus that we continue to just raise up. We're not going to slide backwards. We are going to continue to keep that at the forefront.
And again, these were questions often generated by the board. How can this be? How can this be that our early learners, how can this be with our special needs? How can this be? And in response to that, then you have shown all of this and you've included in here the initiatives. And would you like to speak to some of the initiatives that seem to be working well with those who are experiencing suspensions and so on? Perhaps restorative
Oh, yes,
practices?
yes.
and-
Yes, and we've definitely seen, number one, our instructional coaches. You heard us talk about the modeling, but we know that we continue to have turnover, so coaching with, the instructional coaches are really helpful as they have relationship with our students, relationship with our parents. And when we talk about that belonging, that's number one. And the culture and climate coaches, again, making sure that things that are happening in our building, making sure that the activities, even today, the Leader in Me Day, those things are important, and in making sure that those relationships are happening. Those multi-tier systems of support. We showed you that we had to redo that. We had to relook at that, making sure that we know the data, looking at every single one of our students and saying, okay, what's happening? What's happening with this person? Why aren't they at school? What's happening with them? And so that goes on to our parent liaisons. I mean, they'll call Mr. Easley, he'll go visit the house and talk to them. I call him Brother Holt, Mr. Holt. They are, they really have a Brother Isaiah, Mr. Isaiah. Everybody knows Isaiah Daniels, just calling. So those attendance liaison, conscious discipline, the restorative circles. I mean, you go to ACE, they
Right.
just talk to just the circles, the classroom circles, what happens in those circles, especially on a Monday morning. I mean, sometimes I say, good grief, with these kids, what they talk about, but having those circles are so important. And just the family, just really what's happening. The culturally responsive teaching practices. I mean, really what they have done, and I'm saying Ethan, but it's not Elliot, what they've done. And now the instructional coaches are they started off, Dr. Lopez, what grade is grades 3 to 5, and we're expanding to 6th grade and it's talking really about ambitious teaching. And that's really the core. They've added Gholdy Muhammad's 5 pursuits in, I'm calling it railroads, but it's not roadmaps. I don't know, roadmaps, but really, and so it's making it, when you talk about teacher turnover, it needs to be, you have to have a roadmap. So it's interactive on the computer, but they teach students can put videos in there. It's interactive. And I know you saw it at the retreat, but like to see it really happening and have the instructional coaches sharing out and seeing it work and making culturally responsive practices happening in the classroom. The eye observation, which just go on because I get excited. And just that focus on belonging, not eye observations. Like before, people be writing, I know you remember, like writing observations like on paper, but now we have eye observation. I know you pay, you see the bill for it, but to have the observations now on to be able to give the feedback and have coaching conversations like through cognitive coaching, really asking staff members, just going through a coaching conversation, so much better than the conversations through the paper, just that reflection. People want to reflect and have a true conversation that is just really makes not only the teacher reflect, but it makes then the students experience, because the teacher didn't necessarily think about how the student felt in the lesson. If the principal doesn't help them think through, how did that student feel? Like, what? Or, how did the lesson go that was different? Well, what if that student, like, if you don't have somebody think with you, you just in the classroom, just doing whatever. But if you have somebody help you coaching through either a formative thought before the lesson or a reflective conversation, it's like, oh, okay. And then the student's experience is so much different.
So the focus really focus is again on the student, the student belonging, the student learning and the connection that's there. You also include in here, ensuring that staff embody high regard for stakeholders. So that everyone in your school community, the stakeholders from our community are held in high regard as well. That's not easy. That's a shift. That would be great for all school districts, but it's something that you're actively working on, isn't it true?
It is. And when they don't feel that way, it's like, that's what we want to continue, like while we use, instead of the survey this time, the thought exchange, because, we wanted those ideas and like, so we sent out the thought exchange back in the way so that people can hear their words, because we're hearing like, we didn't hear that you heard something back. Well, we didn't know you felt that way
Right.
until you were saying
So
something.
you were quite responsive to that. And again,
Yeah.
this is a state requirement. A state requirement says feedback. They don't say anything else. But it sounds like you're really trying to make it an enriching experience for both those who participate, those who learn from that information. And then you're doing the next step, which is responding to it. Is that right?
Yeah.
We include in here partnerships. It looks like you've made a lot of partnerships. One thing you were very interested in doing and had shared with the board at the end of the year was in increasing the diversity of the district school improvement team. How is that going?
Oh, my goodness, much better. And I'm going to give Dr. Lopez just really lift that up, because even with the requirement, talking about the requirement versus what's happening. So for example, we have the 2 schools that are required to be going through this process with our PAL from the state. And so ultimately only 2 schools need to do it, but do the process. But we've talked about with the MTSS having to review, every school went through the review process and brought in teachers in that stakeholder feedback process. And so we brought in every school, and even like today, every school was involved. So before, with our district network, you remember, you'd only have a few people just a part of that. So every school has been a part of this whole process along this way. So now every school comes, they've got a whole team, he has them in tables. Every single school, it's been really increased. And so not just a few schools, we've been bringing every school in. And so getting that feedback, trying to say, okay, how much more? And so, and then Julie has been saying, oh, instead of you just getting the superintendent's network, no, go get this, you go talk to the student councilors, you go out, go to them, because they're not coming and having the superintendent's advisory council, but and we've learned, and Dr. Hawkins was saying just the other day, no, I've learned that there's student councils even at the elementary. I didn't even know we had student councils at the elementary. So now we can get their voices to come.
Oh, that'd be
So
wonderful.
for next year, not to have some, she was like, no, that's not what I mean. Have a person that's just sitting here to be on the board, because I said, that's not real, but now that I've learned that there's other student councils that I can go visit, instead of trying to make me have a superintendent
Right.
student advisory committee that they're not coming and showing up anyway. I just go to their meeting, go to their meetings and go to their building. So like.
That must be very invigorating, really. to
Yeah,
see.
it's so exciting. And I can go to their buildings and go to they already have meetings. So just go to their.
And again, the mandate from the state and something that's being implemented by all of those buildings, as you said, is continuous improvement, continuous improvement. Look at the data, set your goals, continuous improvement, continuous improvement. So it sounds like that's the direction.
Yes.
Is there anything that we have not covered that you would like to have pointed out? You have made a comprehensive report here, please.
Yes, because talking about finances, I just have to say, I just am so excited about the fact that, the other thing that we've been doing is the advocacy. And I just have to just
Oh.
talk about the fact that, we are they've come back from the Mackinac Conference and, the fact that we have both YCS's debt is both still sitting on the House and the Senate's budget, the $7.3 million. And so I just thinking about the progress of last year, we were sitting here saying, we just hope they listen to us. We hope they listen to us. And that's so much progress. And to be at at this place a year later. And just that part of.
That would be a big benefit to the community, to the taxpayers, to those who helped with the consolidation so that we could move forward. And that debt has just simply been hanging.
Oh, yes.
So it'll
right,
be wonderful.
operate-
I am hopeful that will be addressed before the end of the year.
Oh, certainly. And even today, I was on a call with an additional $18 million. And so, it just that continues to go on. And I just, again, it's the more we can share about what we're doing for academics beyond what the paper shares. So, yes, there's a narrative, and here's an additional narrative. What we're doing with climate and culture and additional narrative. I think we allow, and you've told us this before, we allow people to talk about one story and sharing additional what we're doing beyond that. And so part of going to Lansing has been, even when we're walking in the room and we're doing this and we're doing, just in small bites, they like the one pager, and it's been super helpful. And just sharing that it's been each person, it's not been Alina's story or Carlos's story or just Damien, it's been a collective. Every single partner, teacher, bus driver, cook, it's been a collective story of every single person is doing that work. So that I think that's the piece that we have to get, is that it's going to be everyone's story because everyone's connected. So for example, the assistant principal, Ray Alvarado's son works in someone's office, and he's told a story to someone else in Lansing who heard that story. And everybody, they tell negative stories too. So if somebody's telling a negative story to a friend, it takes 5 of those 5 positives to overcome. So we have to internally tell as many friends the positive story, because if we're going to get out of the debt, if we're going to get out of out of this negative history, it's been almost 10 years from the consolidation. We need to walk into 23, 24 out of this shadow of darkness into the marvelous light. And so it is time.
100%. We did do an advocacy skills session. The training today was on advocacy skills specialty and on how to make those key points. So we can see the direct application of this. But now is the time. I mean, now is the time when we can go ahead and do that. There was This month, the board will be holding the public hearing and adopting the budget for the coming year. So that will be on your plate. We talked about the auditors will come through and then painstakingly look at every dollar spent that's attached to any of these federal funds. So those pieces will be taking place this summer. I know it is the desire of the board to conduct a retreat. And one of the things that we have talked about is that getting the message out. At this time, individual trustees, Madam President, if it's all right, I'll turn it back over and perhaps individual trustees would like to share with the superintendent some observations from here or go ahead.
Yes.
Madam
Thank-
President.
thank-
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Dr. Zachary Ross. Board members, what feedback, questions, thoughts do you have? Go ahead, trustee Goodrich. sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you so much Superintendent Zachary Ross for all the work that went into this document, and to get us up to speed on some of our achievements. On the student growth data, I know that we'll do more work with this later, and I appreciate all the context you were able to give on that. I take all the grains of salt when looking at standardized test data. But if it's possible, when we do go in a deeper dive on the data, if there's any way that we can get a look at the distributions that underlie those aggregates, averages, I think that would be, at least for me, I feel like it would be really helpful because, there are lots of ways we can get to an average. And I love that Mary brought up the information that we've gotten about, how our approaches, not our personal, but how approaches to reading, are shifting as we get better data. And some of the, like Palo Alto, a district that had an amazing reputation as being so great and they had amazing reading scores. And it wasn't until they disaggregated their data and looked at that tail end and figured out who was there and realized their reading program didn't work at all. And it's one of the places where we really realized that balanced literacy was failing the students it most needed to serve. So if there's any way that we can just kind of see that distribution
Clark
and start
has
to
it
pick
already.
into.
He's ready already for. he will see
Wonderful.
Tomorrow as a matter of fact.
Great.
It's beautiful.
Awesome, because and I know that gets thorny to get all of that into a digestible package. So that is the other, I appreciate that Dr. Hawkins shared previously from one of her courses, some of the ways that we can package that into like stacked bar graphs so that we can really see like not just where average is, but what proportion of our students are falling in these different ranges, so that we can sort of make sure that we're targeting, as I know you are, targeting our resources effectively.
It's beautiful. He has them all already. He has it broken. You could ask him at any point and he has them all. It's beautiful.
I'm very excited.
Trustee
Thank you. You might have already said this, so forgive me if you did. How do our suspensions by race, ethnicity break down in relationship to our distribution of students in those areas?
So this one is when you see this part, this is only special ed on this chart.
Even in the one that just says discipline report.
It is, yeah,
It's only
because this
special ed,
is,
okay.
the only one that's all the way is, and I can get you that, this is the only one that's the whole district on this one is the first one.
Okay, you did say, I didn't
Sorry.
understand it was all the,
So-
although I guess the question still holds, but I'm also interested in that answer for the whole district, but
So we did it just by school here.
yeah. Well,
That's general ed.
the one that just says YCS discipline report. It's like. Right after suspensions by gender.
And this is still special. This one then goes to special ed.
Okay,
So this one is that many, yep, it's 78% are male.
right, so the suspensions by race, ethnicity,
Yep, so that's still.
that's so special. But how does that compare, just out of curiosity, to the breakdown of
To the whole
race
whole
and
district. Oh,
ethnicity? Yeah.
the race one is on the next. I have one for race, hold on 1 second, that is, supposed to be, I have a race one. That is this right here, that one is the one before it. The one was red, I know it just, the B, C, H, Hispanic, and multi-race.
Yeah.
And you're asking.
I
how
was
does
just
it com-
wondering how it compares to the to
one
the
that's not
distribution
special ed?
of race and ethnicity in the district in general. Does it, you know what I mean?
Yes. And I just did the special ed one compared to, so. you look-
Yeah,
I just did the special ed one for this.
You'll follow up with the-
Yes.
yeah, thanks. That's all. I just wondered.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, I will definitely follow up.
Thanks. This
And-
is really comprehensive. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Yes.
So my questions are around in regards to culture. Like one of the things that I thought was good was the community engagement. I think going forward, we probably need to increase those. Because I feel like that would, it invites the community in. It makes them feel as if they're invited, and I think we can get more feedback on areas that we may need to improve on that we don't normally say, okay, I need to address this. We may not see it directly as an issue right now, but it could be a growing concern within the community. So I think that's something, I think that was something good that we did. I think communications overall, to the districts, social media and all of that has improved drastically just to make people more aware of everything. It's so much that's being put out there. So I know Ms. Davis is giving us data in regards to how our numbers are growing online, those types of things. But I think, going into the new year, that's something that we really should really be focused on as well. Because I think the more that you have people coming to the table or coming in the presence of the board, they are more educated about the process and what resources are actually out there. Because there's still a lot of people just don't have a clue. So I think that's something that we're doing, we're getting better at. I just want us to just continue to go down that line. The suspension issue, I'm noticing like the numbers are very high at the middle school, and I believe there's some things that the administration is trying to do. So it would be good to have a more concrete plan that we can see what the long-term goal is and how to reduce those numbers, and which will be a trickle-down effects to increase academics and those types of things. Because that number is more than half of the district, percentage-wise, and that to me is concerning, especially when we have notes about it, how it affects transportation and things like that with our employees. So-
Remember, they're presenting on the 12th. That was one reason why we added the one.
Right, the one meeting that
But they're,
Yeah.
they're present, yeah, but I think that was one
Yeah.
reason why you guys put the money in for the
Yep.
180 program
Yep.
at the end of the year.
Okay, so yeah. But,
I just want to thank y'all for that, though. That's,
okay, and then I think that's all that I had. Trustee Schindler had the same question I had about the other stuff in regards to gender.
Might you say something since that was brought up? Could you say something about the transition
the 180 program, we just added it, I think around, was that March? And it's a intervention program that was, we saw those numbers increasing. And that's why we targeted the middle school because we had seen some behaviors on the bus, some behaviors in the building. And so the board agreed to add that program in the middle school. We knew we did not have that data yet. And so originally Dr. Lopez had added a renewal for that program to come before the board. And we held off. We didn't see that come before the board. It was in your packet, but we wanted the data to come to be presented to the board along with some of the middle school testimonials and the data. And so it will be presented at the June 12th meeting next week. And some of the decreases since that intervention. And so some of the teachers, when the report came out and asked for the feedback, they were like, are you taking that away? What in the world? And so the teachers, you'll see the difference in the data because it literally across the whole, and this wasn't, obviously we didn't do the data. Our statistician Clark did the data, and it's evident where our behaviors, which the bus transportation told us about the data. I mean, the data just is what it is. We know middle schools in general, in case people are especially watching, we know I was a middle school principal for 7 years. We know where in any district where pieces are that are happening, and we understand that compared to where the behaviors were at the middle school, where it is now, we just don't want it to creep back to where it was. And so again, just like the disproportionality, that's why we're looking at the disproportionality, why we also are looking at middle school. We don't want it to go back to where things were. And so we've got to look at those points of data and say, okay, we've got to make a stop and intervene, because it is not just a hunch. It's not just the idea. It's not just anecdotal stories. This is data that we're looking at, and we've got to make a plan, as you said. And what's the plan? What are we going to do about it? We can pilot, but we got to also, if there's data and we're making an intervention, we got to either stick with it, do something with it.
And then lastly, I think it also, just from the community engagement piece where the transportation department voiced their concerns in regards to hoping that we can bridge a gap with communication with them and having them feel like we value, respect, we love, we see and hear them as well. So I just think that's something that when we think about all of our areas within the district, we may want to come up with a staff engagement, or, when it's around the new year or something, where they interact with the board or something of that nature. So they really understand what we're doing as well to help that, because this work impacts everybody.
Right. Well, we also heard that the Transportation Action Team, although we created it, they weren't getting the things back, because there's also
Right.
networks. And
Right.
so something was wrong with their network.
Right.
So there's a system, and we found out there was something wrong in the system, because the board they got one employee. So the system wasn't working. So the building networks don't interact with the board. The building network is supposed to come upward. So we heard that they didn't have nobody on their team and it wasn't coming upward. So that's what was wrong. The action team wasn't coming up right. Like, so when I went over to the group, they were like, they had people from the office on their team. They had no monitors. That was what's wrong. The system was broken. And you're supposed to have drivers and monitors. So the building network has teachers. They don't have principals and just instructional coaches. That's what's wrong. You're not supposed to have them coming to the board meeting. You're supposed to have that action network was made. I literally created a meeting that had all of them in here, including all the drivers. And what happened is the union rep who was a driver quit. She was not the union rep anymore. So she was on the action network team. she quit. So then all of a sudden, it broke. So when she left, it was not the right people on the Action Network team. So I didn't know that happened. So all of a sudden, it was not the right representatives. So the communication two-way that we had created was gone. So then it wasn't the right people on there. So like what happens is we have leadership network, district network, all of the networks. So what should have happened on that transportation network, it should be the voices of drivers, monitors, office people, and the director. So when they were meeting, I'm thinking it's supposed to be coming upward. And then so it goes transportation network, it comes to district network, it comes to executive cabinet. And then that's where we make, and then it all goes back. So I'm thinking we having a good old time, like it's all coming backwards and forward. And so until they came talking about we not hearing anything, like the system, that's why we got the distinguished award, because all the networks work. They meet. So they like, we meeting, transportation network meeting. So I'm thinking it's going back and forth, going back and forth. They getting their jackets. Like, I'm like, okay, we hearing from transportation network. Then I get here and they like, we not being heard. I'm like, transportation network meeting. Everybody networks meeting. Until that happened, I was shocked as everybody else. Because if I'm getting a report that the transportation network is meeting, if they said the transportation network not meeting, I would have been like, oh, but I'm getting building networks are meeting. I mean, that's the system.
But the key players were on there. The key players that needed to be heard were not a part of that team, which they should have been. You know, you had everybody else, but the ones who came from the meeting were none of them drivers and were none of them monitors. So the key people who really needed to be voiced, to hear their voice, were not a part of it. And that's why you get a lot of complaints that you were getting, because that breakdown was, it's just a sad thing. They had to wait till the end of the year. People recognize, even though we can come back and talk about it as much as we did, but nobody still said, okay, where's this breakdown? We didn't really realize it until the end of the school year, but we complained about it from the beginning of the year. You know what I mean? So that's kind of not a good look, really, because it's like, okay, well, what is happening from last year to this year? And like you said, the young lady who was representing them was gone, but nobody ever thought about to say, hey, where's that piece? Where's that key?
And they didn't say anything. And the weird part is that they also have union rep, they have all of those pieces and they never said anything to they still have representatives. They didn't say nothing to those people.
Because to go back on what you're saying, and you know, for my thing is, on my comment, to kind of piggyback on what you said and what she was saying, is that they don't have, and I talked to them, they don't feel trusted. There's no transparency. They don't feel that there's that trust issue from the very beginning. So even though they may not have said anything because they felt that nothing was happening, so why keep saying stuff? Because we don't feel we're being heard. You know what I mean? There was no transparency. So that's why that's where you lost that at. When you have that breakdown and nothing's happening, then why am I gonna keep saying the same thing over and over and nobody's hearing it? Nobody's doing anything. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part, that transparency we have to have with them. And we have to establish some sort of something where they can believe that we trust them. I mean, that they trust us, I'm sorry. That what they're saying, or we're hearing what they're saying. You know, that's with anybody, not just them, but that's with anybody. When we feel that I keep complaining about the same thing, nothing's happening, you don't hear me. So now I don't trust that if I say anything, nothing's gonna happen. So I keep saying it.
Yeah.
You know,
And from the board's perspective, we set up the systems and then we always ask, is that working and how do we know? So this isn't working and how do we know? And you told how we know. So then the next question is.
How do we fix it?
And
Yes.
not how do we, but
Well, I mean, just saying. you
yeah,
know,
the system, you have recognized that the system is broken.
Right.
Come back and show how
Right.
the system has been rebuilt. And
Absolutely.
it's
And we
functioning.
got a new
And again-
director in December.
Right,
So,
I understand.
yeah.
I'm just simply putting it in from board roles. Board roles say
Absolutely.
superintendent set up a system that works,
Absolutely.
get back to us and demonstrate that it does.
Right.
but good for you that you recognize the breakdown is now. I mean, I'm still in the game, but it's still not that we can't be fixed. You know, what I'm saying? We recognize what we can get better. So when we come.
Yeah. We'll get a new director,
Right.
because that was the transition. I think that was the biggest thing.
Mhm.
We are, you know, we need that representation from everybody. and they, to be heard.
Cause we didn't even have a system until a new director came. It wasn't no communication before we got the new director. We didn't even have an action team. We said we had one, but we didn't even have one till after December.
It's good, the good thing is that we recognize the breakout that. Realize it's time to go back, so, okay, we know that's what we need to fix, so now the next step is, what are we gonna do to make sure that.
Absolutely.
Other comments, I have a few. Any other comments or feedback? So I just want to comment on, just to express appreciation for what I saw through this report. To me, it seemed like a lot of proactive measures to address student achievement, to address literacy, working with early learners, recognizing the disproportionate rates of suspensions, particularly along the lines of race, are creeping back up, and just thinking about ways that we might start to intervene early. So I just appreciate that approach. Some things that we know are challenges we're working through. So that feels really good in terms of like where we are at this point in the year, and to see where we're headed, and where we need to go. One thing that came up in a connection that I made, and I would just say that maybe as a board, and to you, Dr. Zachary Ross, for maybe us to look at is, so the middle school data is showing an increase, the higher suspension rates. Then I also noticed in the report that there are so many struggles with the transition from 5th to 6th and from 8th to 9th. And so those transitions, coupled with behavior challenges, really are something that as a board, we have to pay attention to, right? Because when we think about behaviors in schools, oftentimes students are acting out behaviorally because they're unable to do some of the work, and that for them feels shaming and embarrassing because they don't want to be found out, right? That reading is a struggle, that math is a struggle. And so that manifests itself in ways that shows up in behavioral concerns in the classroom. So we might want to just think about the transitions in connection to also, and keeping in mind that the higher rates and the transitions. And so I just appreciate that, again, a proactive measure is being put in place. 180 might be, and then there's all these other layers and pockets of support that will help to lift our students up where we know the transition challenges are there, and not just for our district, but the transition challenges we know in middle school are really, really, really tough. And then one thing about transportation is I did notice in the data appreciation, that they wanted more appreciation or acknowledgement, and just wondered and thought about, in addition to all the great things we're doing to show that we see, we hear, we value, and respect our staff, our students, our families, are there maybe specific things that we could consider doing proactively that might acknowledge that piece as we look forward throughout the rest of the year? That was just something that because I know that sometimes is an indicator of how you perform in your job, that appreciation. And so I believe we're doing a lot of great things for across the board. We know that transportation has been a particular challenge, and just thinking about the areas proactively, because everything in this report to me was like, it's on our radar. We are addressing this proactively. We're really transparent, and we're thoughtful and intentional about our data. And these are some of the areas that we might shore up as we move forward throughout the year. So thank you for such a comprehensive report, and thank you for having so many of these areas on your radar that we can then start to even take mental note of, and to then ask those high-level questions as a board to ask how are things going from a system standpoint. So
Thank you. And definitely, if you can recall, that's one of the other things that we did do is say, we did for transportation, we gotta get this model set.
Yeah.
And I talked about, we already have the proactive document that Dr. Lopez, we talked about, already has of all the, we met with the action team of all the proactive appreciations, even after the
Yeah.
meeting, the email. Thank you for coming to this meeting. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up that day. And the jackets and those things. And literally, yes, the proactive is trying to do.
Yes.
Because all of our staff are appreciated. We could not get our
We could not.
students to school without
them.
them.
Mhm.
So yes, we've got to do it and some,
Yes.
more and more.
Mhm. Any other board comments or questions or feedback? Mary, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I brought bookmarks. So
You
I
did.
know that
You
I bring it
appreciate the
because we
bookmarks.
appreciate that reading, so please take them and use them or hand them out and mention the wonderful things that are going on in episodes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the gifts. You always bring us gifts. And thank you for your facilitation this evening. This has been really helpful and fruitful, and we just appreciate and value you, Dr. Zachary Ross. Go ahead, Mary.
I did want to mention, the board, for prior to the outside auditors, we did do quarterly self-assessments. We continue doing quarterly self-assessment. Was the desire of the board, well, and our recognition that much progress had been made. The recognition was in the accreditors' reports of the high regard that the Board of Education is held in. At that point, we moved away from the quarterly self-assessments to a formal annual self-assessment, which we do in conjunction with the superintendents. We get feedback at these meetings. I think that part of the feedback, whether you do it tonight, Dr. Hawkins, about the upcoming retreat and what might be held there. Some of the conversation today, and it's embedded, would include what we used to call PR, public relations, but the importance of those narratives and what might be shared. I think it's more powerful when each member of the Board of Education has that kind of link into the good news to share. The superintendent pointed out the weight of one bad thing it needs 5 good things, but a unified board sharing a common message. That's something that you might talk, we won't talk about tonight, but the idea of PR and the board's role in that might be something for the retreat or for your consideration. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is on our list. So the timing is perfect. Board superintendent comments. Board members, do you have comments?
I would just like to, just publicly thank everybody, from YCS that attended the Washtenaw. I know the superintendent probably talk about it as well, but the Washtenaw, Community College HBCU Day, it was impactful. Special thanks to Dr. Eric Reed and his entire staff and the planning committee. It was a lot of work, but we had close to 400 students, and from several different schools. But when I say YCS showed up and showed out, they showed up and showed out. Our students were awesome, very well mannered, professional. Yeah, they were great. And so I just want to say that thank you to everyone from the cabinet that came, and I'm looking forward to seeing the impact that it's going to have in our community, as well as next year's program as well. So thank you.
Yes, trustee Goodrich.
I have just a few things. I was thrilled to see so many of our students at the May 23rd Semis Community Forum in my backyard at EMU. So with kind of both hats on, it was awesome to interact with our scholars, and congratulations to Paula Sizemore from AC Tech for being the Semis 2023 award winner for the commitment to outdoor teaching and learning. And just love to see the work that our students are doing through that program. And I know occasionally somebody has come to speak to us. I'd love the next time that happens, if there's any opportunity for us to hear from the scholars that have participated in that program. I also just want to say congratulations to all of our YCS scholars who participated in the Washtenaw Elementary Science Olympiad on May 13th. Super fun to see them at the awards program. And congrats, as always, to Coach Brandon and the elementary track program. I love that. And I love seeing our older students participate and show leadership and inspire our younger students through that program. So that was really fun to see. And finally, thank you so much, Mary, for coming here to provide not just this, but also the CBA classes that you've been able to provide and will provide tomorrow as well. I'm really grateful that we've got a board and district that are supportive of professional development, and congratulations to Vice President Lee and Trustee Townsend, who were recognized at the May 22nd Legislative Relations Network Breakfast, and Brad Van Essett came from MASB to hand out the awards. And I got one of those too, so that was fun. That's all I've got.
Yes.
So I want to piggyback on Trustee Townsend talking about the HBCU. I was there, I was able to be there half the day in the morning because I wanted to see it from the beginning, just how everybody responded. And I talked to a couple of, my granddaughter was there, but I talked to other students from different schools and they loved it. They were just so excited about that opportunity and everything. So I loved it. Everything was, well done, well done. And we did represent as far as the school, just, I think we had the most there from the different areas of schools that came out. We had the most in attendance there, which was a good representation of that. I attended the soiree last week with the officer from Ipsy, the captain, the new elected captain of Ypsilanti. He spoke very well. His speech was really nice. He welcomed us. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to be doing for our community, out there. He's very active. It looks like he's been doing lots of, scoping things out even before he started, from my understanding, when he spoke, and got a bunch of that. I also had another opportunity to take pictures at the 8th grade dance on Friday, which is lovely. I always find it when I like to see them excited, so I think they were excited as well, seeing that they don't dance. So me being there maybe kind of helped them out a little bit because they love, we had a big line, and those pictures were always a force doing that. As well. We got 5th grade, we have the home Thursday morning. I know the same day we're gonna say, or somebody like, pushing it, what I'm saying? Because they're a 5th grader there. They had to really even ask them, because I didn't see on the calendar. I'm like, hey, she's in 5th grade, So they forgot to put it on there. It's a little celebration. So I'll be pushing it for that. And then we got the 8th grade celebration on, I think that's Friday. So we got a busy week this week. So that's all I have.
I just wanted to thank, or to congratulate, the superintendent on the article that you
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
and how much exposure it's been getting, and, well done.
Yeah.
And I just have a few things. I'll start with transportation, just to say again, I know we've said it multiple times, but I do appreciate all the work that went into organizing the session. And I appreciate all the staff that came and participated, everything that went into it. And we value so deeply our drivers, our staff, and the process is important. And I think it's a signal to our community that this is something that the board has made a priority, and something that our superintendent has taken really seriously, and will move it forward, and will report back to the board on what kind of the next steps are. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that went into that transportation study session. The mental health awareness fair, May was Mental Health Awareness Month. There was a fair at Prospect Park that was really well attended, a lot of different activities happening at that event. Just wanted to say a huge thanks to Taryn and her team, whoever was part of that team and pulling that together. It was nice to be there. Also, I think the promotion ceremony on Friday was already mentioned. There was a discussion that I want to have just briefly after I go through the updates, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. The last thing that I think I want to say is that, graduation was beautiful. And just another big congratulations to all of our scholars who graduated, all of their achievements. I think those are the highlights, right? We are elected as school board members, and the highlights for us are being able to celebrate those accomplishments and those achievements because we have outstanding students in this district. And so it was just a joy and a pleasure to be part of that, the culmination of all the hard work of our teachers, our staff, our families were there to celebrate. So to see them walk across that stage was really just a special moment. And so thank you to all that went into that. I know it was Dr. Hugan's first graduation as a new principal, and it went well. It just, no one would have known any different. It was just perfect. And then the question that I wanted to pose to the board, Superintendent Zachary Ross and I were talking about this earlier. Monday, we need to add a closed session at 5:30. So I wanted to see if board members would be available for a closed session at 5:30 on Monday. And the budget.
It'll be short.
Yep. So we have the budget hearing, plus we have a closed session with Attorney Kaba. Would board members be available to come at 5:30 to start?
I'll be here.
I have a graduation on that day, so I will not be available.
I actually have had I have a childcare gap and a family thing has come up. Which might make Monday touch and go, but I'll do the best I can to figure out how to get it worked out.
So alternatively, Trustee Schimmel, what about this?
I'm good for that.
It works for me. I can be here at 5:30. Alternatively, I was gonna say that we could start at 6:30. We would just start with the closed session, and then that would just push, everything back a little bit. So we can do that as well. If that works better.
Do it at 6:30, then it's at 5:30.
Well, if it doesn't work, if the 5:30 time is challenging for board members,
Yeah, because you.
we
still
could
got
start
to-
at 6:30. It just means we would go longer into the, for our meetings because we're starting.
Let me know, so I know how to put it on my calendar. Don't
Okay.
share it right now.
And we'll call the other two, we need at least four. So I'll reach out. And then we'll send a communication out to let you know if it'll be 5:30 or 6:30. Does that work? Trustee Fields, does that work for you?
Six.
I'm gonna reach out to the two board members who are absent to see what time is better because we gotta make sure we have a quorum. And so it'll either be 5:30 or 6:30, but I'll communicate that out to the board.
Yeah, I just want to, to make sure, I'll leave it open.
Okay.
5:30. I'll be 5:30.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And you won't be here at all, Trustee Townsend.
Yeah, I'll confirm,
Okay.
the graduation time. I thought it was at 6:37. But if you have the closed session, I probably can attend that at 5:30. But I'll double check and let you know by tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Dr. Zachary Ross.
And thank you again, everyone, for tonight, for the feedback. I've taken notes. I appreciate the feedback very much. You ditto on everyone, so we don't need to go through all of those. It is certainly the best time of the year. This is what we look forward to, just all of the celebrations, all of the accomplishments, both of students and staff. And it's not both, and the families and all of the support of everyone who has contributed to all of the success. You did mention some upcoming, so I won't go through all the backwards, because all of those things are wonderful. And the upcoming just driving possibilities, with the partnership with Toyota on June 8th. All of the activities internally. I mean, there's so much more. You think like we're almost there to the end, but there's so much more to look forward to. And Grizzly Learning Camp, can you believe that we are on a wait list only? I mean, I could not, I can't, I hurt my heart to say, I was like, no, we can't say closed, we have to say wait list. You know, but to be on a wait list only situation, that's something to be proud of, like, wow. But to be proud of that is so many people that want to take advantage of the Grizzly Learning Camp. So as soon as school is out the 12th and then the very next week. So remembering that although we are ending one thing, we're starting Grizzly Learning Camp, starting professional developments over the summer and planning, and we reopened the district July 1 for the 23-24 school year. So there's a lot happening in the district, and all we can do is just say congratulations to everyone for all of the work that you have done and accomplished, that we as a team have done and accomplished. And everything that you heard on this report is something that, even though it's mid-year, term progress monitoring, is the work of every single person in this district. And I just thank the entire community for what they've done on behalf of all of our students. And I'm just so grateful to work somewhere where you keep students first and academics first, and we can talk about students and academics and not all the rest of this stuff, and that we have people talking about everything else other than student achievement. And I just appreciate you and appreciate the support and the fact that we can celebrate students and what students are doing and the experiences that they have. And so, thank you. And thank you, Mary, for your leadership and your support in keeping us focused on the main thing. And that's our role of ensuring that our students leave out with choice and voice and agency. So thank you.
One thing I didn't mention, just a congratulations to all of us for the acceptance at the Q Conference, which is the national, in collaboration with the National School Board Association, the Q Conference coming up in September. So we will be presenting and preparing and talking about the preparing and the presenting. So that'll be exciting, board, won't it? Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting though, it is.
It is
Be able to
exciting.
Go somewhere and we're representing, we don't have to watch other districts speak and do different things, so that would be exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah. Thank you, Mary. We appreciate you. And some of us will see you tomorrow. Yeah. All right, anything else for the good of the order? All right, seeing nothing, we are adjourned at 8:16. Good job, board.
Can we just leave?
You did a very good job.
This for you, so,
Oh, thank you
Oh,
so
thank you
much.
for printing those.
Oh, yes. It is, okay. I don't know if anybody knows, Meredith, will you be at, Thursday event?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, no, you're fine. I just want to see if anybody knows.
Oh.
Yeah. Trustee Fields.
yeah.
Trustee Fields. Do you need, you coming Thursday, right?
I
For the
stopped
Toyota
at right
event?
pink.
Wow.
Because I walked
Thursday, you're
over by
coming
that
to
old
go to-
Briarwood, or I don't know, yeah.